A lot of people have said to me, hey, what's the toughest mountain you've ever climbed? I could easily say, well, K2 in Pakistan, right? The Savage Mountain. I could say Everest, but really the toughest mountain I've had to climb is myself, is my own mountain. So as an explorer, you explore your outer world, but the really good explorers, I think, also explore their inner world. And what can they learn about themselves, in this journey we call life?
This is Life's Tough. Explorers are tougher. And I'm your host, Richard Wiese. Scratch the surface of an explorer and you'll find an adventure and a great story. This show is about their tales. This podcast is a proud supporter of the Explorers Club and the EC50 Initiative, 50 people changing the world that the world needs to know about. For more information, go to explorers.org. Our guest today, Bo Parfet, has summited the highest peak on all 7 continents and is also a successful financial investor. Yet he almost didn't make it out of the 2nd grade. Bo Parfet, welcome to Life's Tough. Explorers are tougher. 2nd grade seems a little early in the game to sort of be cashing in the chips.
The story is, when I was in 2nd grade, it was a parent-teacher conference. And, I overheard my 2nd grade teacher telling my parents, hey, listen, this guy's really struggling. This kid's struggling. He's not going to make it out. He'll never graduate high school. And I'd love to tell you that I heard that and that I went home that night and I said, hey, I'm going to prove him wrong. And hey, there's a great story. The truth is I went home that night, thought there was something really wrong with me, cried my eyes out. And, it was a really long process, Richard. I started working hard. I got a tutor. I also had a speech impediment. So on top of being dyslexic and struggling to, read and write, I also had a speech impediment. So I kind of had the double dose. My parents quite weren't sure what to do. So I had a tutor and I started tutoring and I just slowly started working harder. And then in 7th grade, my 7th grade tutor told my parents, I've got some good news. Bo will graduate high school, but not college.
Bo, I don't know why people are dismissing you. Now, I know you for quite a few years, and one of the things that you are is a very agile speaker. I've heard you up on stage. I've heard you. So how could these teachers have been either so irresponsible or guess so wrong?
I think that for a lot of folks who's ever listening, whoever has a disability out there, right, a learning disability, maybe it's a physical handicap, maybe it's a more on the kind of a dyslexia type of situation. School only teaches that, there's about 35 different ways people absorb information. And maybe it's 40, right? But there's a lot of ways that people absorb information. And it's just finding the way that you absorb information. Unfortunately, school only teaches about 1 or 2 of those. So if you don't fit into that mold, you can really struggle. But once you figure out your method of learning, then you can really take off. And I discovered how I learned the best really in college, but I had to suffer through a lot of years to figure out my best learning style.
You've graduated from Kellogg Business School, which is one of the top business schools in the country. What do you think was that moment? Was it a long process, or when did you actually feel that you could be good at something?
I really, a couple things, you got to pick something that you're good at. So if there's any parents out there, for me, I fell in love with basketball. So basketball was an area that I could excel because I put a lot of time and effort into it. So basketball started to build my confidence. And I kind of liked math. I liked to practice math. I wanted to get fast at math. So then math was another building block. So I kind of turned these stumbling blocks into stepping stones, if you will. But I really started to hit my stride in college. And one of the tricks that I learned, if I could get notes just pick a class, I walk in there, I find 3 people that I think are smart, and they're going to take copious notes and good notes, like the cool kid in back that's trying to pretend he's not smart, but he really is smart. The person in front in the front row that's asking all the questions. So I'd get 3 people to give me their copies of their notes. I'd compare all 3 notes. If I found something on all 3 notebooks, Richard, it got a green highlighter. If 2 of the 3 notebooks had it, it was a yellow. And then if it were on the notes in the textbook, there was like a 90% chance it would be on the exam. So that was kind of a trick that I came up with, and it really helped me absorb information really quickly.
But Bo, I can tell you where that trick didn't work out so well. So you and I met around 2002 or 2003, and you asked me if I would be in a 3-day canoe race in the jungles of Belize. And you assume since I was the president of the Explorers Club, I must know what I'm doing. And to this day, I tell people the closest I've ever come to dying is in a canoe race with you. Do you remember? I'm sure. Well, of course you remember that.
I do. And Richard, you and I both know this, and a lot of the listeners do as well, is when they read the story about the great expedition, or it's in the National Geographic or a documentary, you only hear about these successful expeditions. You and I know, and many others know, most of them fail. Most of them are a lot of lessons learned there. So we did this amazing canoe race in Belize. So the fun tagline, remember, can you Belize it? Remember, because it was a canoe race.
I do.
But Richard, what I'll never forget, when we almost should have probably perished, it was you and I and John and Liebs, right? Remember Jonathan Lebo? We all had our life jackets on. We got sucked under this, in rapids,
strainer,
far right side, and we were all pinned under the water for a long time. I came out first. Liebs was second, and what felt like 5, 6, 7 minutes, I was like, where's Richard? I was panicking, and bang, you popped out. Thank goodness. But none of us, what was so amazing about that is none of us had our life jackets on after. I don't know where they went. Someone was looking over us that day.
I learned a few things from that, and I have replayed that scenario in my head a few times. I learned that you could never underestimate the apprenticeship of skills, that you need skills when you do things. I did learn that some of the training that my father had given me, he was a pilot, about creating this bubble of calm when you're in an emergency. And I learned something about you. You popped up, you sort of shook it off really quick, and we were back in the race. And I thought, wow, this guy really just went through something that would have most people say, I'm out of here. And you were just like, we were in dead last place at that point in the race. And every hour we try to see if we could pass someone else and get further up and further up. And that was a great introduction.
That was fun. And it's a testament to your character as well. I think we knew we were in dead last by hours. I mean, we were in dead last by hours. And we just said at some point, it was pretty quickly on, we said, how can we make this more fun? Let's not finish last. Remember that? And then when we first saw that first boat, boy, all this adrenaline kicked in, and we just started rowing, as fast as we could. And all of a sudden we were in second to last place. And that kind of buoyed our spirits and said, hey, let's go past another boat and another boat and another boat.
Well, I don't know if you remember the boat we passed first. It was a grandmother with her dog in the back of the canoe.
Yeah.
So, there were some really good canoers in there. But, I think I'd like to think that really started your sort of career as an adventurer explorer.
It did. Absolutely. I just read Ryan Holiday's new book called The Obstacle is the Way. A great book. And I just couldn't help but thinking, right? We had the obstacle is the way. If you're faced with something difficult, there's great learning there. And if you push through it, you usually come out of the other side a better person.
Our mission is to empower the next generation of explorers. If you like this podcast, please recommend it to a friend and have them join the expedition. And for those of you who don't know what the 7 summits, it's the idea is to climb the highest peak on all 7 continents. And I believe without exception, there was always some major obstacle on every one of your climbs. And unfortunately, and I've never had this happen, you've actually had people die on your expeditions. I believe on Everest might have been the first place.
The first time that I saw folks die was on Mount McKinley, or Denali, I guess now. We were going up to the 14,000 foot camp right before the famous head wall. They were heading down, and maybe 45 minutes later, you could hear this big pop, and you could hear the kind of the avalanche and the rock fall. And the group that just passed us, one of the folks there got hit by a rock. Actually, quite a few of them did. That was not a good situation. I've never been in the military. It's one of my biggest regrets is that I didn't serve in the military. So I wasn't prepared for all the kind of the death that you see on these big peaks. But yes, seeing a lot of a lot of people you saw that day and the next day, hey, that person died in the ice fall, or that person died high up on the mountain. And then they, if they're low enough down, you see the bodies coming down right past you. You see people that sometimes the body sits there because it takes a while to get a group to carry them down. So you're walking by a dead body right offside of the route. Up high on the mountain, you see the skeletons. Coming up on those in the dark with your head torch is definitely a strange feeling, and it makes you focus, and it makes you definitely humble.
Yeah, you and I happened to run into each other at base camp on Everest in, I believe it was 2005 or six. And it was interesting because you had come down from some of the higher camps and then you were going to go back up. But I often have people come to me and go, my dream is to climb Everest. And, you say, oh, what kind of experience? And they go, no, I've never worn crampons, but I'm really tough. I remember you saying to me that you had a tent mate, I think it was a tent mate, that at about 27,000 feet, you got to your tent and he sat there and cried because he couldn't remember how to take his boots off. And it's just sort of a testament to what altitude does to people.
There are so many stories about either pulmonary edema or cerebral edema, hypoxia, the altitude affecting people. One story I think I'll probably never forget is I was climbing. This was on Choyo Yu. So for those of you that don't know, Choyo Yu is the 6th tallest mountain in the world. It's in Tibet. And I was skiing it. So I had the skis on my back. I'm going up for the summit and it's dark, right? You leave at midnight. So you got this little head torch on, and way up ahead, I saw this fixed headlamp, and I was like, oh, I'm really gaining on this person. I don't know, 30 minutes later, I caught up and I was like, wow, I'm really gaining on this person. Well, it turns out as I got up there, this person had their oxygen mask was off. They were holding their Nalgene water bottle, with their glove off, completely passed out and just kind of slumped over. And I went, hey, buddy. Hey, are you there? Hey, no movement. Okay. Kind of gave him a little shook, no movement. I took my glove off and I shoved it down his back. He was still warm. And I just said he would not wake up. And so I put his oxygen mask back on him, cranked it up to 4, the highest level, radioed down and said, hey, I've got a situation here. There's someone, this is generally what he looks like. We need, he needs some help. He's unconscious. And, so I started relaying back with, finding out who he was, the right base camps. And then about 3 minutes later, his eyes open up because he had been, breathing oxygen now. And then he kind of looked over at me and he goes, how are you? I go, how am I? How are you? If I would have walked, climbed by you, you'd be toast. And he goes, yeah, I'm just kind of resting and I'm going to head up. I go, you're not heading up, you're heading down, So then I had to explain to him kind of what happened, the situation. And I sat there with him for quite a while. And then, a Sherpa came up actually pretty quickly and found him. And he ended up getting down the mountain. But, there's a lot of situations like that. You put people in gamma bags to help kind of decrease the air temperature, putting adrenaline shots into people or dexamethasone, the shot into people's thighs, trying to help people, not succumb to the altitude.
So how tough is it on Everest? I mean, for people who haven't been there, they hear the stories, but you've been there, a couple times, I think. What's it like in what they call the death zone?
The death zone is a very difficult experience and environment. A lot of people talk about that your cognitive level is about that of a 3rd or 4th grader because there's just the oxygen it's such a low oxygen per breath. I can't remember the stats anymore, but what is it, 70 or 80% less oxygen than at sea level? So it is what a lot of people don't know. So it took me shameless plug here in my book, Die Trying. Okay. One man's quest to climb the 7 summits. If you're really bored, you can check it out. So in that book, I climbed Everest in 2005 and did not make it. Okay. I made it in 2007, but in 2005, our team was going for the summit attempt. It was bad weather. It was like June 4th or June 5th. It was one of the latest summit attempts in the history of Everest. And what happens when you acclimatize people go, oh, I need to acclimatize. It means you're putting more red blood cells. You're getting more red blood cells into your blood. So think in your veins and arteries, think of wet cement going through a pipe. So that big, wet, heavy cement, if there's any type of clog in there or your artery isn't 100% clear, a lot of people die of heart attacks or strokes. So we were going for our summit attempt, and our dear friend and team member, Rob Milne, died. I had passed by Rob about, an hour before, and I kind of had my ice axe and I kind of smacked him kind of on the butt and said, hey, man, we're climbing Everest. We're doing it. And he kind of smiled back and, we kind of gave a little high five. And, an hour later, this chatter on the radio just went bananas. And he had died, and he had died instantly, which is obviously it's very sad, but it wasn't something where we had to do a big rescue. He died instantaneously. At that point, the Sherpas get very weary because they believe that you disturbed, the mother, the goddess or the spirit in the mountain. And the spirit didn't go back in the mountain. It's still out around in the mountain and could kill someone else. They wanted to head down, and a whole host of other scenarios. So we decided to, as a group, we eventually all headed down. That was a very difficult day. And, Rob Milne and his family, I still, I love them to death and I think about them often, but the death zone is not a forgiving place. It's very, very scary, and you have to stay focused.
You were single when all of that happened, and now you're a married guy. You got a couple kids. Does that idea of taking that kind of risk, it's always a risk. Has that changed the equation for you?
It has. A lot of people have said to me, hey, what's the toughest mountain you've ever climbed? Right. And I could easily say, well, K2 in Pakistan, right? The Savage Mountain. Which I climbed about 5 years ago. I could say Everest, right? Because of a lot of the situations and adversity we face there. But really the toughest mountain I've had to climb is my own mountain. So as an explorer, you explore your outer world, but the really good explorers, I think, also explore their inner world. And what can they learn about themselves, in this journey we call life? When I left to climb K2, which is kind of my big dream. There's been more people in space than have summited K2, much higher death rate. Everest, I think, is 1 out of 10 that perish. K2 is about 1 out of 4. I had a 3-week-old baby. It was tough because I really wanted to go with a specific team. And I thought the timing was right. I just spent 1.5 years training. And I ended up going to K2. Very difficult on my family there. My wife wasn't too pleased with me.
This was one of those things where you have to sort of switch from, because when you climb a mountain or do an activity like that, it's very inwardly driven, right? It's about you. It's about how you get there. But at that point, you had a wife had just had a baby, and you're off to Pakistan, which isn't exactly the safest country to go to.
It's true. If I had to do it over again, I wouldn't have gone. I could have waited 1 year or 2. I could have done it before I was married with kids. Yeah, definitely a lot of lessons learned there, a lot of humility for sure.
And so, once you finished those 7 summits, was there a sense of relief, a sense that you wanted to do more, a sense that you were going to settle down? So how does this all culminate?
I think that it took me the 7 summits for me because I was working or I was in graduate school, and I had to kind of either use vacation time at work or find a break in school and try to go knock one off. I think it took me 7 or 8 years. It was a 7-8 year goal. And I remember finishing it. I was very, it's funny. You're happy, you're proud that you're flooded with all these emotions. And for me, and many other people, naturally look to see what's next. For me in 2007, it was entrepreneurship. And I wanted to kind of climb that mountain. So I started a business that had apartments in college towns. So student housing apartments. And that business became decently large and very successful.
You've had some very pivotal moments in your life. You had this whole, fighting against the inferiority complex that maybe teachers gave you in school. You had to face so many people dying around you. Mountains, you probably have had more people die around you than any other explorer I know. And then, obviously you get married, have kids, and you go through ups and downs on the finances. Is there a takeaway? Is there something in life that you sort of think when this is all said and done would have been the best move, worst move?
I told my kids, I try to say this to them every morning. I just said, you don't necessarily have to be the best student, right? But I said, I just want you to be the hardest working student today. Can you promise daddy that? You'll be the hardest working student. So I really believe in hard work. I believe in humility. If you never give up, I mean, that's a tough thing to say. It's kind of cliche. Oh, never give up, keep going. But it is so true. And, everyone in life receives setbacks, but, there's always a teaching. There's always a silver lining in that. So this was from Rob O'Neill, the famous Navy SEAL. He said, the wolf on top of the hill is not as strong as the wolf coming up the hill.
Interesting. As we conclude, I'm going to sort of go with an inside joke that we've said to each other on many occasions. Hey, Bo, you can always be my wingman.
Bullcrap, you could be mine.
We just for the audience to know that I probably have quoted more lines of Top Gun with Bo than any other human on earth. Hey, Bo, thanks for sharing your time today on Life's Tough Explorers are Tougher. It'd be very interesting to see where the next 40 or 50 years leads you. So, and hopefully we'll be in another canoe race together.
One kind of cool mountain that we're climbing as a family is we have a kind of an impact investing or a venture philanthropy entity. It's called Denali Venture Philanthropy. It's just for my family. It's very small, very humble. But we have a goal to bring 300,000 people from working poverty to middle class or higher. Okay, 300,000 people. And we're over 50,000 people so far. So that's been a great mountain to climb. Our boys are involved with that. And that's something that is a great mountain to climb. And probably when we hit 300,000, we'll climb another mountain. So you keep going. And then one other thing you said, Richard, one of the things about having a disability of some sort is you fail so much when you have a disability. Hey, I'm learning to walk, or I'm learning how to talk, or I can't see, or I have a dyslexia. And when you have something like that at such a young age, you just fail all the time. And then pretty soon failure becomes, it's just not scary anymore. So I would also say to my kids and anyone listening is, don't be afraid to fail, because you learn a lot. And I think I read this, that 40% of the CEOs out there are dyslexic or have some form of disability. So, failure, and there's a lot of good lessons there, a lot of resiliency you can learn from failure.
Thanks, Bo. And if someone wanted to find out more about you, Bo, where can they look?
They could go to Bo Parfet, BoParfet.com, or Denali Venture Philanthropy. Look, I'm happy to share my 2 cents with people. Hopefully there's a couple nuggets or words of wisdom, but I definitely am still learning, and there's a lot I can probably learn from people that reach out to me too. So I look forward to that.
Well, good way to look at life. Thanks again, Bo.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
I hope you enjoyed our podcast. Now we have a little favor to ask. We'd really appreciate your support, so make sure to leave us a 5-star review and hit that subscribe button so you'll never miss another episode. See you out on the trail.